Just to put some perspective on how COVID-19 has changed people's mentality, I'm going to read an article by a man named Damien Cave, in an article from the New York Times, in which he spends 2 weeks in a COVID quarantine camp in Australia. Now, I'm going to read through this, and we'll see if it raises any red flags for anybody. The article says, quote, "Such is life in a former mining camp near the northern tip of the country, in a place called Howard Springs, a temporary home for hundreds of domestic and international travelers being forced to wait around long enough to prove they're COVID-free." My experience exposed more than I expected about human nature, but also about the ways that the pandemic keeps pushing countries back into their own peculiar currents of national identity. In the United States, it's individualism. In Australia, it's the collectivist urge to protect the many by treating the few as a potential threat, sometimes at the expense of personal liberty. Now, you would think that if they were truly acting upon the collective good, then it wouldn't mean the destruction of freedom for everybody, which is currently what we are seeing in Australia. Anyway, the article says, Australia stands nearly alone in its bet on quarantine infrastructure as a long-term answer to the pandemic. 2 more camps, each with a capacity of about 2,000 people, are being built outside Brisbane and Melbourne, and Sydney and Perth may not be far behind. The sites, called Centres for National Resilience, are an embodiment of the country's commitment to COVID-0. So, they're already prepping for more segregation. We're going to build camps outside of major cities to be sure we have a place to put people if they are too much of a risk for society. If we think it is necessary, that is where we're going to put them. So they are prepping the people mentally, which is what COVID has been doing, is prepping people mentally for the things to come. And they're also physically prepping other facilities to put people in. Now, if you read this article, to me, the tone is just kind of very nonchalant. Just kind of, well, this is just how they do it. And it's documenting just the basic things that go on inside one of these quarantine zones. Okay, but if you read through it and really start to dig into the roots of what it actually means and what it actually signifies, then it's kind of disturbing in the end. He says, quote, "But at some point I noticed a shift in attitude. Maybe we'd been softened by the desserts, the sharp lemon meringue, the lush chocolate tart. One day when the food delivery carts rumbled in, I peered down our row and noticed that we were all craning our necks, leaning out from our little balconies like animals at a zoo. But this is completely fine. It's completely normal. This should be what we all want in the end. It's nice to have everybody take care of everything for us, right? It's nice for us to live like animals, chained up like animals, caged like animals, while people just take care of everything for us and bring us food. It sounds completely normal, right? Nobody who has ever done that in the history of mankind, that has never been a bad thing. That never ended horribly for anybody. Many of us fell into the same daily routine. Up early, exercise outside, work or read, nap in the afternoon, return to the veranda for sunset. There was a simple, natural rhythm about the most basic human needs: outdoor space and social interaction. The saddest part about this is that there are actually people who want to live like this. There are people who want to live like this. There are people who want all of their needs and all of their resources to be funneled through the government so they can be taken care of in every aspect of their life. They don't want to bear the burden of living. They don't want to bear the burden of taking care of their families or the communities. They want the government to come in and simply fix everything. I want to be able to wake up every day and just exercise and read, maybe work a little bit, nap in the afternoon, and sit on the balcony of my little cubicle and watch the sunset. It sounds amazing. I want people in blue suits to be able to bring me food every day. Okay, I don't want to bear the responsibility of life anymore. It's so pathetic. And there is a temptation to embrace all of this, right? There is a temptation just to say, well, maybe for the greater good, we should just accept it all and just let it play out however it's supposed to play out. But this stuff is scary. Because there are people who want to live like this, but there are also governments who are willing to treat people like this. You talk about an ultimate scenario where the government has control, where we're all living in our little huts and they're providing everything for us and we're just sitting there waiting to be done with. Whatever they want to do with us, we're just waiting there, waiting to be their little toys, waiting to be their little puppets. We're waiting for them to just do whatever they want with us. Okay, and you talk about the collective good. It's always, it's for the collective good. Australia, we're focused on the idea of collectivism. Okay, let's think back to Nazi Germany, okay? The reason why the Nazis hated the Jews so much is because they viewed them as a parasite, infiltrating their lives, infiltrating their society. And they believed wholeheartedly that by eradicating the Jews, they were doing themselves and the entire world a huge favor. The Nazis believed they were acting upon the collective good. It was good that they would get rid of all the Jews. It was good that they get rid of all the parasites. Okay, and so just because you say it is for the collective good does not mean it is actually for the good of everybody. It just simply means the collective good is just a fancy way of saying that, we're just going to do what the government says and then hope that it plays out the way we think it should play out, even though the governments throughout this world have their own agendas. People just don't want to look and see for themselves. Okay, and even the person writing this article goes on to acknowledge what it could actually potentially mean, and what stuff like this has done in the past. The article says, quote, "The problem, however, is that even humane quarantine amounts to a forced retreat. The decisions made by governments about who poses a risk are rarely politics-free and frequently go beyond medicine to fears shaped by emotions and biases. Australia fused its earliest quarantine efforts in the 1800s and early 1900s to its racist White Australia policy. The first Director General of Australia's Department of Health, John Cumston, even directly stated that quarantine was meant to keep the continent free of both diseases, and certain races of aliens whose uncleanly customs and absolute lack of sanitary conscience form a standing menace to the health of any community." Okay, so it admits, this article is, the person that is writing this article is admitting that history tells us what this kind of segregation means. And right now, it is being masked, no pun intended, under the facade of keeping everybody safe. But, those facilities are still going to be around when everything is over with COVID, if it ever ends. But there is always something else going on behind the scenes, right? There is secondary motives to what is going on. And so this is how COVID has shaped the mentality of people throughout the world. That the government they are the only ones that can solve the problems. They are the only ones that can provide your every need. Okay, we're not going to rely on God. We're not going to rely on family or community or church or society. We're not going to rely on freedom or democracy or any of those things. We're simply going to rely on the government to provide all of our needs for us. And so even if that means that once we move beyond just the medical part of COVID-19, okay, what if it's best simply because, we can't have certain viewpoints in our culture. We can't have certain viewpoints in our society, okay? Well, hey, we still have the camps. The camps are still open. We still have a place to put people, even if it's not related to COVID. History tells us over and over again. History tells us that this is not okay, that this is dangerous, that this is something very, very absurd and disgusting. But because of COVID, because of the breakdown of civilization as we know it, people are being prepped. People have been mentally prepped to accept this as the normal way of life moving forward. Hey, people are going to suffer for this. The people of Australia are going to suffer for this. They are suffering for this. People of America, this isn't too far off. I know we're not exactly in that. We don't have camps set aside for people who have COVID-19 yet, but the discussions and some of the things that I've heard, okay, the ideas are not that far off. So we could easily be the next in line for this segregation because people are talking about it. Some people want it. And the only other thing that we need is a government who is willing to implement it. It's the only other thing that we need. We are this close.